Hello, folks. It's George Leoniak, and welcome to New Geometry. Today, I've got a short video for you. It's going to be more about the sacred square roots, and I'm really going to get into a bit of the process of some of the questions that I contemplate while working through this. And it really comes to working with a kind of simplified, organic way to work with the geometry and how that takes me on a journey of discovery. So I'm going to share my screen because I have about 9 slides to walk through. And we're going to talk a lot about the sacred square roots, golden proportion and ratios, and how this sort of all comes together. So this is a drawing I was going to do in the New Geometers Meet-Up. Didn't wind up happening a couple weeks ago, but I'm going to do that New Geometers Meet-Up. This one is coming up. Check it out. It will be on the New Geometry course site. I'm planning on doing one this weekend. So I think I might actually do this drawing. But the important thing about this is not just drawing these circles and, there's an amazing amount of information in here. It is about the way that we do this drawing and how we enter into it through the process of really the transmission of the technique that we walk through the steps. It's a real hands-on way to engage with this. We'll do this whole drawing without any use of a straight edge at all. We'll just be using the compass, and there are particular steps to get each of the square root values of 1 to the square root of 5, along with square root of 2 and square root of 3. That's the red and blue, square root of 2, square root of 3, and square root of 5, along with square root of 4, which is 2, and starting with the unit 1 circle. These 5 values are really the crux of sacred geometry. And how this diagram works as we'll walk through these steps here is it organically builds out. And although it looks like continuing vesicas, we could turn these into, and this is really where the key to how this works as a more organic mandala-like pattern is that we'll take each of those square root of 2 value, for instance, and put it into this 6 around 1 scenario where we go ahead and create the seed of life hexagon geometry to create the rest of the circles around of that particular size. So for this one, we take the square root of 2 circles and go around, or square root of 3 circles, go around the seed of life, square root of 4, which is 2, go around, square root of 5. What I mean by this image here is that I say that the square root of 2 creates 1. Now, what does that mean? Well, when we take square root of 2 circles, which are the larger circles around the seed of life here, they're going to intersect the black circle at the center, the vesicle that's created, the little almond shape, will be right at the 1. If we go to the next one here, and I take square root of 3 circles now, and go around. These are all points that are picked up in the diagram, all with the compass, no straight edge used, where the vesica that's created by those will create the square root of 2, the black circle here. And that's actually the circle that you'll use over here to do the circles for the square root of 2. Square root of 3, of course, is right here. That's easily created when we just do the regular vesica that we see. Is the double the radius of the central petal here, which would be 1 to 2, make the circles. Now, I'm not going to go through all of them. We go up to square root of 6 because the square root of 6 circles will create the black square root of 5 circle. I just called this one, the unit 1 creates 0 because it doesn't give you, it gives you square root of 3, of course, out here, but it doesn't give you an inner vesica in this location over here. So the big circle here is the 0 point at the start of the whole diagram, which is the seed of life. Now, as I contemplate sacred geometry, I also often wonder, if I just have my compass, how am I going to create these values? How am I going to go through this process in a steady way to start with the seed of life, which I believe is the foundational pattern to create all of these patterns that I'm about to show you, and the golden ratio. Seed of life is the starting point to get going if you're not using a straight edge for any of these techniques. Now, the reason those 5 diagrams at the bottom here, I'm not including the seed of life one, because with the seed of life, it doesn't give you by itself just 6 around 1, 6 circles around 1, meaning this diagram here, the 1 creates 0 circle template. That doesn't just automatically give you the golden ratio. But the beautiful thing about the next 5 circle patterns, the square root of 2 creates the 1 pattern, they'll organically, just on their own, naturally, when you start to put these into the 6-fold pattern, not just the regular vesicas by themselves, like the previous drawing at the start here. When we go ahead and do the 6-fold symmetry all the way around, the beautiful thing, as I said, will happen is the golden ratio will present itself in key locations when we start to draw a line. Just one single line is all it takes to have that line naturally be divided by the circle template itself. So this is a total different way to think about creating the golden ratio and relating to the golden ratio, because it's just a gazillion techniques out there, and I've discovered a lot of them, and I've seen a lot of the techniques of little circle intersections and little fragments of diagrams that say, well, here's the golden ratio, here's the golden ratio. This is a more organic way to create the golden ratio, because no one is creating the technique to divide the line. The line is not even need to be drawn. The proportion is already given where the circles intersect. So it's a very natural way to create the golden ratio. I'm basically just drawing the line segment in to show you where those intersection points are on these diagrams down here. And the amazing thing is it only happens, and I drew this all the way out in my previous video on the square root relationships, all the way out to like square root of 20 or something like that. And I kept looking to see if golden ratio would organically show up in any of the other patterns. Take it on as a challenge for yourself if you'd like to see if golden ratio will show up in those other diagrams. And I hunted around in a lot of them, and I couldn't find any more naturally occurring sequences where circle overlapping will generate the golden ratio. It really just happened between 1 and 6, square root of 6 circle templates. So with that, we're able to create golden ratio dodecahedron. All these dodecahedra in these templates right now are the same 5 templates that I showed you on the previous page. We know they all have golden ratio in it, right? We just now are going to add some additional lines and maybe some additional circles to create different different size dodecahedra. This one's tilted. This is just naturally where it shows up in this. And many of these techniques I have shared in my other videos. I'm just kind of putting the pieces together for myself in my contemplation of this sacred geometry, of just how it all is related to these square root values and the relationships between these square root values, and how they intersect with other circles to produce golden ratio and the dodecahedron, and the important lines that you need to get in the right spots to produce a dodecahedron that is holding the golden proportion, meaning that all of these are the same angle, the same, golden proportion values between the back edge and the star pentagram that would be drawn on each of the slanted pentagon faces. Between these 2 diagrams, they actually just use different techniques to pick up the same size drawing of the dodecahedron. We're just using different methodology based on the circles that gave the points to work with. So that's the dodecahedron is probably one of the, compared to the icosahedron, the more difficult to draw, but it was really like the interface between the non-golden ratio forms, because it includes 5 cubes within the dodecahedron. If you're unaware of that, I have a gazillion videos on that talk about how the cube is inherently in the dodecahedron, and not just one of them, but 5. But if you have one, then of course you have an octahedron, right? So here's your cube, right? Here's your octahedron, which will be in it. And of course, in every cube is your star tetrahedron inside the cube. So you get 2 tetrahedra. This is, the dodecahedron. Now, basically, we have all those other 4 platonic solids, and it is easy to draw the icosahedron in these. The dodecahedron is more challenging. So you have all 5 platonic solids in 5 different circle templates at this point. And that really just breaks up this notion that there's only one circle template that is the only way it will be. And this is 5 different ways to produce those platonic solids with, graceful interactions between these circles that are illuminating the forms of these patterns of creation. And it's all done through the root values, the sacred mathematics underlying the circles. So the other cool thing that happens here, and I chose to put 2 diagrams together that worked really nicely together. They were the seed of life as the foundation. And then I took the 1 creates square root of 2, and square root of 2 creates square root of 3 circle templates. And maybe these aren't the best names for them, but those are these 2 diagrams here. I overlapped both of them. The first and second one, well, the first 3 basically, because then we have square root of 2, square root of 3, and 1 all set up in one diagram. And when we do that, they all come together in this amazing way to create 3 levels of golden ratio circles, or 3 levels of golden ratio squares. So we have 1 square, 2 square, 3 square, and we have to draw on some lines to pick up the 45-degree angle to build it out. And when we do that square, we can put circles in it, which are the golden ratio circles that are at each of those 3 successive squares. And then from there, magically, the circles of those golden ratio circles will interact with the existing circle templates that are already there. And then we'll get the, 36-degree angles and 108-degree angles. So we'll get the decagon in here, 144-degree angle in this area. So we'll get decagon at 3 scales of the decagon. And we'll also get the hexagon at 3 golden scales. So one circle template based on the root pattern of the seed of life will get us to create the square, the decagon, and of course the hexagon. That was the easiest of them. But all 3 of those are now unified in one diagram, and including the golden ratio segments for each of those 3 polygons. And from there, there is a lot of possibilities for all your platonic solids from all the different views, just like that in one diagram. Really amazing. It's a very simple, organic way to go about it and see the golden relationships between the polygons, opening up to the ability to work with the golden ratio forms in your sacred geometry drawing. And each one of those, of course, can be done in isolation. You don't have to do all of them drawn at the same time in one of the diagrams. And there are other ways to do this, of course, but this is one that's just naturally flowing, because this diagram circle setup is basically just from the circles with no lines, and then we add the lines in to create the structure. Rather than using the line in the beginning to help you to get the structure, it's all supported on the scaffolding of the circle template. And then we add in the lines. So this is probably my favorite of all those methods. I've not drawn the square root of 3 create square root of template out, but the largest circles here are the square root of 3 circles. They're very easy to pick up to give you the square root of 2, and I just didn't rotate that around to the 6-fold symmetry here. So if you did, you'd get a more mandala-like appearance of this, but I kept it a little more simple. In fact, you don't even really need the outer 2 circles on either side here. So you could take them out if you didn't want them in there as well. But what this does here, but you could only take the 6-fold out if you didn't draw a line down the middle. It's like, how do you get the line of the opposite side to do the other circle? Well, if you start on your page with the horizontal line, well, I can do a circle in the middle and 2 circles on the other side. But if you just have a compass, the only thing you can do is just work your way around until you have the ability to draw a horizontal and perpendicular line to the horizontal line. So it's essential to, if you're not starting with your straight edge, but starting with your compass instead, to draw the whole seed of life. But this diagram here is showing how all these sacred values just show up in the sacred geometry. And if you just drew this and didn't even know that the beauty of the mathematics are in this, it's kind of missing the other side of sacred geometry. You know, we can make pretty designs and colorful geometry and amazing patterns to meditate with, but in there, and that is a sacred way of reverence of relating to the imagery, and the sacred values, the sacred numerics are also contained in there, and they're most easily recognizable when we start with the unit 1 circle. Okay, so A to A1 here is 1, and that simple starting point of 1, and typically I don't draw at that scale because it's relatively small on the page, but when we do, it will create all these values of square root of 2, square root of 3 in the circle template. Then we'll have, phi, we have the square root of 5 showing up in here. We have square root of 5 plus 1, which of course, if you divide that in half, that is how you get 1.618 phi. We have phi, this is a 3.33. Well, that was phi to the 5th power, the square root of that. That gives you 3.33. And we have 1 divided by phi and the square root of phi, which is 1.272. In here also we have the phi scaling angle here, 27.3, with the base angle of 76.345. I have videos on that. That's the Russian pyramid. And down at the bottom here in red, we have the golden ratio Giza pyramid. And that here is doing slightly different because the base angle isn't 1. And actually, the height of the pyramid here would be 1. And that here is giving us the length of 1.272 for the slope. And the base would be 0.786, which is the square root of 1 divided by 5. So anyway, just a lot of sacred mathematics. It's just important to know that your geometry is imbued in this. And this simple diagram also gives you the both pyramids, golden ratio pyramids, the most highly recognized golden ratio pyramids, that is, of the Giza one and the Russian pyramid and the phi scaling angle, all simply in one diagram. This is such a beautiful way to simple circle template to create four golden ratio squares, which are the same ones we could put the circles in, all simply within this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 circle pattern. And notice I didn't do the whole seed of life here because in this drawing I did start with the horizontal line. So 6 circles will give you those 4 golden ratio squares in such a simple way to do it. It's the way for me. There's become this simple way to do it because I often look for what is the Occam's razor, what's the most elegant way, the most simple technique to enter into a drawing and diagram. Well, for me, it's the seed of life and probably the square root of 2. If there was any one diagram, would take the square root of 3, square root of 2, like this over here. Square root of 3, square root of 2 with the seed of life gives me all this. That is very beautiful representation of all that is considered sacred with the values and the geometry and the mathematics associated with it in one simple diagram. To get all that is just phenomenal. And it really comes together when we add the other perspectives in. And so from that same square root of 2, square root of 3 creates square root of 2 template, which is the one I'm showing you all the values on here, this one here. Well, from there, we can also access the 3 perspectives. And here I'm showing the icosahedron at the largest scale in that drawing in this square view, the twofold symmetry. So it nicely fits in the largest square or any of the other squares that could be in there. And then I can also, from there, with just a few additional circles, once you understand how these circles create the pentagon, inside there, we can create the decagon, and with the same circle template, we can create the icosahedron from the vertex view. And we can also do the same circle template with, the appropriate additional circles of the golden ratio circles to then create the hexagon version of the icosahedron. I also like that there was a simple way to draw this perspective. Well, it's not really a different perspective. It's the same square view drawing, although it's put the icosahedron on the axial view. And for that, it doesn't center in the drawing, but that's for a very particular reason, because the golden rectangle that's right below this drawing is inside that icosahedron. And the important thing about this drawing is that it shows that the center of the spiral, the originating spot of that spiral, will be at the center of our diagram. And that will, circle around and up and spiral out from the center, because in it, it is embedded in the icosahedron, not at its midpoint, but on the center of the pentagon faces that it's made of, including the golden rectangles from this view. You can see it easily. This is probably, and this was one of the most thrilling discoveries for me, because I think that my expansion and understanding of the golden ratio in geometry came about when I discovered this phi yantra, I call it, a fantastic video, probably from 2 years ago now, was coming up with this diagram and discovering those 4 golden ratio circles, starting to see how they work together, expanding them out into hexagon view and pentagon view to start to understand how it all came together. This was the diagram in square view that expanded my understanding of the golden ratio and really took it to the next level of seeing how it relates to the other perspectives. Once again, this is the phi scaling angle, and I wanted to show that we can easily pick up in this diagram at key meeting locations of how to radiate these lines. We can do them from all corners if we want, I just chose to do one so we could see the lines from the corner coming to the specific meeting spots in the diagram. And where they cross our vertical line, well, that's going to be the place for the center of the circle that will be the next smallest stack of the stacked spheres, if you look at it as a pyramid, or stacked circles in this drawing. That was so simple and elegant the way that came about. I have a class on the golden ratio pyramids where I show so many different techniques of how to produce this. This one I didn't know about at the time, of how simple it was to do, but here's another easy method. So look at all that's going on in this one circle template. And of course, there are other discoveries to be had with all these other root relationships and all these circle templates as we see them here. And the golden ratio ones is throughout it, so all this golden geometry is going to come into play. This is, I guess I'll call this one the golden way, because this congeals or generates a lot of my favorite discoveries in sacred geometry that are unique discoveries of methods that I've come up with to produce these different forms that I haven't seen elsewhere, all in one diagram of these polygons. This method of creating the pentagon in the flower of life is one that I have brought to the geometer's attention, is how to create the pentagon by these intersecting circles. The other one that I really love is this golden rectangle one. And that one is really a special diagram for me because most golden rectangle drawings you see will be in orientation to the square that we see. And we can easily draw golden rectangles this way. But the key thing about this drawing is where the diagonals cross, right, and the vertical and 45-degree angles are going to magically give you every single golden rectangle or square that you need to produce afterwards to continue the generation of that spiral, with the most important point being about this is that it's centered at the heart of our diagram. And the reason it does that is because our golden rectangle is tilted off center with, I think, a 31.7-degree angle there. And as I showed the icosahedron, it's actually part of the geometry of the icosahedron. So it's an interconnected form. It's not just a flat rectangle, it's part of a larger structure. The golden hexagon was one of my favorite discoveries as well. I did many videos about 2 years ago as well on the golden hexagon, and I keep learning more about it. That is a hexagon, 6 sides, that has golden proportion edge lengths. Large one to small one is golden proportion. And that is found in the cross section or a layer of the dodecahedron. So it's not just any random golden hexagon, it's part of form again, it's part of the dodecahedron. I also have this discovery of creating the golden phi scaling angle in a true golden ratio diagram, one that doesn't base it on Fibonacci size circles getting larger. So this is an infinitely expanding golden proportioned scaling angle that doesn't start out that way and doesn't start off with the 1 by 1 to 2 to 3 to 5 progression, where that early progression is very wonky in terms of golden ratio values. This technique just happened to fit in here with the Giza pyramid down at the bottom. It's almost like you could spin the golden rectangle on top on the pinnacle of that. But it's a very cool diagram that kind of combines some of my unique discoveries all together in that square root of 3 creates the square root of 2 diagram, and picking up the additional intersections from those 3 perspectives. And how it worked for me in terms of learning each of these, the first one I discovered was the golden rectangle. I mean, not the golden rectangle of these diagrams. The golden hexagon, I figured out how to work with first, because I didn't draw the golden rectangle like this for a while. And then through working with the golden hexagon from the hexagon perspective in the golden seed of life drawing, I then figured out, wow, that creates a pentagon in there too. That was the second discovery, was the pentagon. And then sometime after that, I came up with the golden rectangle drawing. And right after that golden rectangle, like I almost needed to discover it in advance, was of course, I discovered the pyramid one. That was already techniques for how to do that, because that's Kepler's triangle. So that you can do with many other techniques. But this Russian pyramid phi scaling angle was the next of the last of those 4 in the sequential order of how these sort of unlocked for me, was the phi scaling angle. So to me, it's a real compilation to see them all come together. And really, New Geometry is providing a new geometer, NEW geometer, who's feeling a KNEW call to get engaged with geometry, a really clean path to enter into sacred geometry that engages with all the perspectives. All the perspectives are unified in a new way. Through various circle patterns, it opens the door to not a one perspective way of relating to geometry, as well as working with the square roots and how those circle patterns interrelate, and how the golden ratio unites all those scales and values together, and brings the numbers to the beautiful mandala making all together into one coherent wave, that is a unified perspective in sacred geometry. So, check out the New Geometers Meet-Up this coming Sunday, and we may draw this because I never got around to it in the last one. And I think, like I said, this is a participatory way of being engaged with geometry. If you enjoyed this video, I am thankful that you were here listening to it, but I would love to encourage you to pick up a compass. Maybe there's enough information in what I've provided here that you can walk through these steps. But as you're guided through the process, for someone who's really deep into this and loves this material like I do, I think that it's an amazing opportunity to sit down and walk through this type of drawing and hear the types of contemplations that led me down this discovery route that is the heart of all these other things I'm sharing in this video and in the other 125 videos that I have on my channel. So please join me for that. And I have an apprenticeship coming up in October 30th. Check that out. That's an 8-week great way to deep dive into sacred geometry with me through all these perspectives and drawing forms and golden ratio. And if you're a returning person, the master classes are starting. I have master classes that are going to be 5-week sessions to work on some more of the complex geometry in many of my other videos. So I want to thank you for joining me here. Please subscribe to the channel. Check out the New Geometers Meetup. I also have the Patreon that you can be a part of, but it's a participatory activity. So get your hands engaged with it, because that's where the real nuggets of the relationships develop for you, specifically for you, through that type of unlocking that potential in your own consciousness to see how it infuses with this amazing sacred geometry pattern language, and what's alive in you that will emerge. Well, that remains to be seen until you come out and give it a try. So thank you so much for being here, and I hope to see you maybe Sunday. And if not, I'll be back with another video in the future, and maybe I'll see you at some of those other courses. All right, much love and appreciation. I'll see you later. Bye.